Hi guys, in this video we are going to learn about the distributive property of multiplication. So first we're going to learn how to apply the distributive property of multiplication, and then we're going to learn how to use the distributive property of multiplication to help us simplify large numbers. In this question, if you apply the correct order of operations, you must get 36 as the answer. So we're gonna check and see if we can get the same answer from the distributive property of multiplication. So according to the distributive property of multiplication, the number in front of the bracket is multiplied to each number inside the bracket. So that means we're gonna multiply 4 by 2 first. And then we'll multiply this 4 by 7. So on the first part, we're going to multiply 4 by 2 to get 8. And then we're going to multiply the 4 by 7 to get 28. And lastly, we're going to add the 8 to the 28 to get a 36. And this is the final answer. So notice that this answer is the same as this one. So it means multiplication is distributive over addition. In this question, we're gonna check if the distributive property of multiplication is distributive over subtraction. So we're gonna distribute the 4 to the 7. And then we're going to distribute the 4 to the 2. So on the first part, we're going to multiply the 4 by 7 to get 28. And then we're going to multiply 4 by 2 to get 8. Then and lastly, we'll subtract 8 from a 28 to get a 20. And this is the final answer. So it's the same as this one here. So this means the distributive property of multiplication is distributive over subtraction. In this tricky question, we're gonna ignore the 5 and distribute the 4. So like last time, we're gonna multiply the 4 by 7 to get a 28. Then we're gonna multiply the 4 by 2 to get 8. And now we have to apply the correct order of operations. So first, we're going to add the 5 to the 28 to get 33. And then we're going to subtract the 8 from the 33 to get a 25. So this is the final answer. In this question, we're going to use the distributive property to multiply a single digit number with a 3-digit number. So the plan is to cut this 3-digit number first. So we're going to cut this 3-digit number to 100 plus 30 minus 6. So this is still 124. And we know that we can distribute multiplication over addition and subtraction. So we're going to distribute the 5 to 100 first. Then we'll distribute the 5 to a 30. Then we'll distribute the 5 to a 6. So we're going to multiply 5 by 100 to get 500. Then we're going to multiply 5 by 30 to get 150. And then we're going to multiply the 5 by 6 to get 30. And then now we're going to add and subtract here to get 620. And this is the final answer. In this question, we're going to use the distributive property of multiplication to multiply this 2-digit number with a single digit number. So you know the plan. First, we're going to cut this 2-digit number. Then we're going to distribute the 5. So we're going to distribute the 5 to the 10 first here. And then we're going to distribute the 5 to the 4. So first we'll multiply the 10 by 5 to get 50. Then we'll multiply the 4 by 5 to get 20. Then we'll add the 50 and the 20 to get 70. So this is the final answer. In this question, we're going to see how we can use the distributive property of multiplication to multiply a 2-digit number with a 2-digit number. So first, we're going to cut the 23. And next, we're going to distribute the 46 inside the bracket. Notice that we can still cut the 46 to make our calculations easy. So we're going to cut the 46 into a 40 and a 6. Then we're going to distribute the 20 inside the bracket. So now we're going to multiply the 40 by 20 to get 800. Then we're going to multiply 6 by 2 to get 120. Then now all we have to do is to do the same thing on the right hand side. So first we're going to cut the 46 to 40 plus 6 . Then we'll distribute the 3 inside the bracket. So next we'll multiply the 40 by 3 to get 120. Then we'll multiply the 6 by 3 to get 18. So now all we have to do is to add everything, and this should be 1058. So this is the final answer. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next video.